Shopping for bikinis is probably my least favorite thing to do, so I started making them myself, and I'm going to show you how to do the same. I've been able to make so many different styles of bikinis and even dresses and tops, all based off of this bikini technique. So I'm going to show you how so we can all wear handmade this summer. So first we're going to get our tools together. So we're going to need a crochet hook. I'm using a 6mm hook. I feel like the bigger the hook, the easier it is a little bit for you to maneuver the stitches. Then we're going to need a good pair of scissors, and these are stitch markers. You can also use a safety pin or even an extra piece of yarn. I'll show you where we're going to use that. And these are good to have. They are weaving needles, and we'll use that at the end to clean up our ends. And some yarn. So I would generally, for bikinis, use a natural fiber like cotton, but for the sake of this video, I'm using what I have, and I'm using acrylic. So to begin, I like to have a visual of where we're starting from. So where these lines are is where we're going to begin, and then it's kind of going to be like a rainbow shape that we're building out from. So we start with our first loop just to kind of cast onto our crochet hook. Feel free to pause and rewind as many times as needed so you can get any part you're missing down. But we're going to go ahead and get started. I feel like in the beginning is, for me, the most difficult part because it's just a little awkward to hold. But once you get the placement down, it'll go pretty quickly. So we're just starting with chaining 8 stitches. This is, again, from my personal size, I would say between like a and B cup. This would be the general measurement. So we're going to chain up 8, and then instead of working into that first stitch, we're going to skip it and then go into that second one, and we're going to do single crochets all the way down. So this is the stitch we're going to be doing the entire time, the single crochet for the entire piece, even the straps. So what you're doing is basically inserting the hook into that stitch, wrapping and pulling through the yarn, and then wrapping over and pulling through the whole thing. Once you get a nice rhythm going, I feel like it'll be a little easier. But again, feel free to pause and rewind as many times as needed. Zoom in if you need to see exactly how to do the stitches. Okay, now that you've gone all the way down and you've reached the last stitch of this chain where the string is hanging from, that is going to be the top of our bikini. So this is how we build it out, so it's not just one continuous line. You're going to do 3 single crochets in 1 stitch. So we're going into the same stitch 3 different times with 3 stitches, and that'll create like the rounded rainbow shape that I was referring to. So now that we did the 3, we're going to turn our work this way and continue working down the opposite side. So here it can get a little bit tricky just because of the placement of the stitches. We want to make sure we're not putting a 4th stitch in that same hole. We want to move over to the next one. So wherever there's a split, you're going to see there's one hole there, and then there's one hole directly next to it. We're going to go right directly next to it into there, just to kind of give you a visual of where we're working into. So we're going to go ahead and put our hook into that second stitch and not into the same one we've been working in. And we're going to continue to do the single crochets down that side. Now, because it's the opposite side, it's a little bit tricky, but take your time and actually see where you're putting the hook. And so we're going to be going back down with 7 stitches. So altogether in this round, we should have a total of 16 stitches. We want to make sure we're hitting that very last stitch as well, because if we miss it, it'll change like the overall shape of the bikini. So we want to make sure we hit that very last stitch, and this is the direction we're going to be working in the entire time, just kind of back and forth in this rainbow style shape. So what we want to do is chain up 1, and we're going to work back again around the other way. So we're going to chain up 1, turn your work so that way you can work in the right direction. And we're going to not skip the first stitch this time, and we're going to go right into that first stitch, again with single crochets. So we're inserting our hook into the stitch that we're working in. Insert the hook, pull through the yarn, wrap it over and pull through again. Insert, pull through, wrap it over and pull through. So now we're back at the middle part where we're going to be doing the 3 single crochets in 1 stitch. And this is where we'll be using our stitch marker just to mark where the center is. So the center is going to be the second one of those 3 crochets in that 1 stitch. So we're going to go ahead and put on our stitch marker just to remember where we're going to be increasing. So now that we have that marked, we're going to go ahead and work our 3 crochets into that 1 stitch. And you can go ahead and work right on top of that stitch marker because you can go ahead and just unclip it and it won't affect your work at all. If it does get a little difficult for you to work with it there, as long as you know which one you're working into, it's fine. It's more so to hold the spot for the next round. So we're going to go ahead and move it up to that next row and continue working our single crochets down the other side. It's a little easier now because there's like more defined stitches on this side. Where it's equal to the other side. So continue working your single crochets in. Again, you just insert, pull through, wrap around, pull through all. Okay, now we finished our second round, so I'm just showing you kind of what that looks like, and we're gonna go ahead and chain 1, turn our work again, and then continue with the third round. I did a total of 13 rounds for myself for my specific size. The good thing about this is that you can continue to build it out and then measure it to yourself to see if it fits, if you like the way it fits, if you like the coverage and things like that. So just keep going until you're liking. We're gonna go ahead. This is our third round that we're doing, and the same thing all over again, just basically all single crochets all the way up to your stitch marker at the top. And then once we get there, we're going to be doing 3 stitches in that 1 loop and then continue back down the other side the same exact way. So like you can kind of see the rainbow shape that I was referring to. As long as you have that shape continuously going, you're good to go. And just continuing to move that stitch marker up after you complete each row to that new center stitch, so that way you kind of keep track of where you are. It is nice, a nice visual. I personally don't use them often, but when I do, I remember why I should be using them often. All right, here we finished our third round, and I'm going to continue doing this, like I said, for 13 more rounds, and this is what it looks like. And I'm kind of just showing you how you can count. So basically where you see there are pillars, it would be considered a row. So we're going to go ahead and count, and we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13. And to go ahead and clean it up, I'm actually going to, I didn't cut off the yarn yet. I kind of left it on there. We're going to go back into our loop, and we're just going to go along the bottom part of the cup to kind of clean up the edges. So we're going to chain up 1 and do the same exact thing we've been doing, but just across along the bottom. So you're just going to go into all of the stitches that you see along the bottom. Just do a single crochet all across that, like I'm doing here. And although this is the part that technically goes under, like under the breast, it still would be nice to have a clean edge. So we're gonna go ahead and do that with a single crochet, and you'll see at the end how much of a difference it makes. This is just like the detailed part that brings the look together ultimately at the end. This show is so cringe, I cannot.
Tell me about yesterday.
My day.
Yeah.
We went for activities and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just not used to like,
Being in that position.
yeah, like dating like people at lunch or like
Yeah.
with some dating like people.
That's
But
fair.
this is for to take courses here to do that. You guys are just so different.
Okay, now that we have cleaned up our edges, you can see how smooth it looks at the bottom now. And we're gonna go ahead and grab our scissors and cut our yarn. So we wanna cut a little bit of a long string, and instead of pulling it through right away, we kind of just loop it through one more time and pull it through to create that knot so it doesn't come undone. And we're gonna go ahead and remove our stitch marker because we don't need it anymore. And you have your first cup. And basically what you want to do is that all over again. So if you want to rewind and rewatch to try to make the second one, we need 2 cups. And then I'm going to also show you how to connect these cups. So we want to first identify like the inside out versus the correct side out. So the part with the string would be considered the inside. So we want to do our right sides facing each other. So the outside part, we want them to be facing each other and having the strings be left exposed. And we're going to go ahead and do our loop-de-loop again and combine them. So we're going to go through the first corner stitch of both of them together. We're going to put our hook through there, add our yarn, tighten it of course, and then we're going to pull it through both cups and do a single crochet, the same we've been doing this whole time. And I don't like to just do one. I like it to be more like a bralette bikini, so I'm going to go up 4 stitches. But I was just showing you the stitches along the top so you can kind of see how much easier it is to see. When you look at it from that angle, you can kind of see where you're working into and how many stitches to count to go up. So for me, I like about 4 stitches upwards to create that bralette kind of fit. I like the coverage it gives and the support, instead of it just being one singular stitch holding it in the middle. But you can do that as well if that's your preference. This is the great thing about making your own bikinis. You can make the little details and adjustments yourself, especially once you get it down and get comfortable making it. But this is what I was referring to about the bralette style, how it kind of just attaches a little bit higher than a normal bikini. And now we're going to work on the straps. So same thing, create your loop and then insert into that middle where you had your stitch marker at is where you're going to be working in your straps because it's the center of the cup. So we're going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be doing a total of 80 chains here. This is the stitch that we did in the very beginning to begin our project in general. So I'm only doing 80 of them for each strap because for me, for my size, that is the perfect amount to be able to tie it and still have some left over for the bow part. And we're going to be doing the same thing for both sides. So 80 for the halter top straps and then also 80 for the around the back straps as well. So now we have our 2 top straps. And for this part, if you wanted a little bit more support and you wanted these straps to be a little thicker, what you would do is instead of cutting it off at this end, you would work your way back down all the way to the bottom just to make it a little bit thicker, the same exact way we did it for the cup. You're just going to work all the way down to create a thicker strap. But I personally don't mind the thin straps, especially in the summertime, just because the thinner the straps, the least amount of tan lines. So for me personally, I think this is good. And we're going to go ahead and add the straps again for the back part. And the same thing, we're doing 80 chain stitches for this side as well as the other side. Now that we did our straps, we're going to go ahead and clean up our loose ends. So we're going to take our weaving needle. You could also use your crochet hook and kind of weave the yarn through the way I'm going to do it here, but this does make it a little faster. So once you weave the yarn through the loop on the needle, we're going to go ahead and tie a really loose knot just so it doesn't come off. And we're going to start weaving our ends through. And the reason we're doing this instead of just cutting them off is so that way it doesn't unravel, because if we cut the yarn too close to the stitch, it'll come undone and there's kind of no going back from that. So we want to keep the ends a little bit long and just weave them in so that way we can save our project from unraveling. You can tie a knot. Actually, you should tie a knot before on each of the ends. But this also just ensures that it really doesn't come out. So we're just weaving it. I'm weaving it through the stitches and pulling it through, and it makes it just super invisible. No more strings hanging. Although personally, depending on the project, I leave my ends out loose. But for this specific one, I wanted it to be a super clean cut looking bikini, and we're gonna go ahead and weave them in. So that's all I'm doing here. Same thing on each of the sides. It is a little time consuming, but it is worth it for the overall look at the end, being super clean and just looking very much bought at the store when you made it yourself, you know? And these little tiny ends, those are ones you can cut because we've already weaved it through, so it's long enough that it's not going to unravel. So we can just cut off any little tiny ends that we have hanging out. And then here you can kind of see the difference. So one side I cleaned up all my ends. There's nothing hanging anymore. And then the other side is how we started. So you can see how it just cleans up the look. So we're going to go ahead and do the same exact thing to the other side. And now that our ends are cleaned up, everything is good to go, and your classic bikini top is completed. This is actually the base to so many of my pieces that I have made over the years. Once I learned how to do this, it kind of inspired me to just do so many other things like tops and dresses of all different kinds. This is one way to make a bikini. I definitely want to show you guys another way that I like to do as well. So let me know if you're interested. But yeah, this is what we have. And I'm excited to see everyone's bikinis this summer because we're having a handmade summer this year.